today's video, we're going to be tearing apart the front end of the S10, fixing the sagging front springs, the bent springs issue that I'm having. Also, we're going to be replacing some heim joints that are squeaking. So let's get started. Okay guys, with the rear end of this truck mostly dialed in, I have a few trips on it. All the welds are holding, nothing's cracking, nothing is moving. Done some actual real rock crawling, done some trails, and I'm pretty confident that it's going to last a long time now with the new shock setup and the new track bar brace and the new frame gussets, all that stuff that we did in the last video. All that's holding up. I have a few trips on it now, good to go. So now let's move our attention to the front end of this truck and kind of get everything dialed in and fine tune everything the way that I want it to be. So you can clearly see this nice big curve on this brand new metal cloak dual rate spring. Does it work? Yes. I don't like it. I want to fix it, and it's not correct. It kind of bounces up and rubs on this, and I can actually feel it through the frame and on my feet in the cab. I can actually feel the coil spring as it's moving. It kind of clunks and creaks, and I can feel and hear it through the frame, through the body, and everything. It's not good. I need to fix that. And it's a brand new spring. I don't want to ruin it and give it a permanent curve. I want to straighten it out as soon as possible. And another thing, this is a TerraFlex 1.25" TJ coil spacer, because this, if you guys don't remember, you haven't watched any of the other videos, this is a, I believe, a 5.5 or 6.5 inch lift TJ spring. I think it's a 6, might be a 6. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll put it on the screen. Anyways, metal cloak dual rate TJ front spring, TJ spacer. So this is supposed to be a 1/4 inch and a quarter, and it is now down to about 1 inch or less. It's not. It is failing. Clearly, it's failing. You can see that we're having an issue. So the whole front end of this truck is now sagging because I'm not getting the ride height from this coil spring because it's not straight, and this is collapsing on itself because of the weird angle. And they came off of my TJ. I ran these on my TJ for 5 years. They're old and worn out already when I put them on here. So when I go and redo this, I'm going to be putting on new polyurethane. These are super hard. They shouldn't collapse like these ones. Energy suspension. These are like factory replacement 3/4 inch spacers. So if I stack 2 of these, it would be technically the same height, 1.25 inches, as this was supposed to be. The main issue down here is our coil spring pad. We got our digital gauge. So we got 8 degrees of caster back, basically around 8 degrees. It's not perfect. This is a little truss piece, but we are sitting back 8 degrees, and this coil pad is the same, which is causing this spring to do this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use some Barnes 4-wheel drive leftover coil mount parts. I don't know exactly which ones I'm going to use, but I have a pile of stuff right here, and I'm basically going to make a new spring pad that's flat, and then that's going to raise the front of the truck up for sure, and it's also going to stop this curve from happening. So let's tear all this out and start fabbing up some new coil spring mounts on the bottom here. With the front end tore apart now, I'm setting up the caster on this before we get started. I have spent a bunch of time getting all the joints done and everything all set up. I decided I want to run about 6 degrees of caster. Factory is about 4 to 5.5. With the bigger tires and the lift and everything, I really want this thing to drive really nice and straight down the road without any wandering, so I'm going to go a little bit higher. That's just a personal preference. You can run within specs, that's totally fine. I prefer to run a little bit higher with a bigger lifted truck with bigger tires. Now that we got the spring out, we can see this spring tower. This was actually in a TJ, so this was the bump stop perch. So this would have the bump stop in it in a stock TJ, which I now have it on top of the axle going onto the frame. So I'm no longer using this pad other than to locate this spring here. So I don't need it to be this tall, and you can see that the spring is rubbing on this. These metal cloak dual rate springs will never come out of this the spring perch here. I actually had to use the coil compressors and actually remove them. So that's one good thing and bad thing about them. They will never come out because they never fully unload and then come loose, because of that upper part of the coil stays tensioned the whole time. The bad thing is they're really difficult to remove, but that's okay. So we'll make it easier to remove, and we'll keep the rubbing down by just chopping this off. Okay guys, I got a lot done here. So this is the new spring pad right here. I cut this much out of it. Like I said before, I don't need this because I'm not using this as a bump stop. The bump stop is now on top of the truss, and I'm using the frame as a bump stop. So I don't need this. It's in the way, rubbing on the spring, causing issues. So we cut this down so I have 2 inches. So this will still retain the spring. But I don't need it super tall to use it as a bump stop like it did in the TJ. So I end up actually moving this one a little bit because the bolt for the hydro assist ram was touching the spring, so I kind of relocated this just a tiny bit over to give myself enough clearance so the spring could actually fit in here, because before I had to remove this bolt and nut in order to actually pull the spring out because it was bound up in there. So I don't want that to be an issue. All I did was cut this whole pad off, and then I tossed a piece of 1/4 inch underneath it. It goes all the way across on the bottom side of it, welded it to the spring pad, and then welded this back down on top of it. I could have made something that spreads it all the way across, but this is 1/4 inch. I don't think I'm going to have any issues. So just a piece of 1/4 inch underneath this piece, welded on, then this is welded on top of that, and then welded here and welded over here, and it's not going to go anywhere. Another thing that we got to do is I got the new heim joints from Barnes 4-wheel drive and misalignment spacers. This is going to replace the track bar heim joints that were noisy. So I got those to install, and I also installed, because remember from the last video, this bolt hole was ogged out just a little bit, and it was a little bit too big. So Barnes 4-wheel drive also makes these weld washers. They make a few different kinds of weld washers. This one was the most simplest. There's one where you have to drill this out to, I believe, 7/8, and then it has a sleeve on the inside of it, so it goes inside of it. This one doesn't. It just welds on the outside, and you can see right here, this hole is now a true 5/8. And this side right here, actually I measured it, and it's not ogged out like this one is. So this one is now perfectly 5/8, and it's nice and tight, and this one is tight as well. So no longer will I have a moving heim joint in this guy right here. So make sure you check out Barnes 4-wheel drive if you're interested in heim joints, weld washers, all kinds of builder's parts that I use to build this, steering, suspension, coil mounts, everything is Barnes 4-wheel drive. Make sure you check them out. Use the link in the description to get 10% off automatically, or use the code MuddyBeers at checkout. Okay, here's the spring in its perch on its weight done. You can see it's actually straight now, and yeah, I like it. We are back from the test drive. S10 looking awesome again. Coils are settled in. Another thing I did is I actually shined up these shocks because they were pretty gross. I didn't spend very much time on them. I actually have some new stickers as well. I'll be hitting those up again real soon to fully clean them up. But We started at about 8 1/4, and we are about 9 1/4, a little bit less. So we gained almost an inch in the front here. We are sagging pretty bad here in the front. Now it is level and looking so much better. I'm way happier with this setup, with the springs actually straight, and then an 1.25 inches of these polyurethane bushings from Energy Suspension, just the TJ ones. Well, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure you check out the Rubicon video that I just put out last week if you haven't watched it already, and take advantage of your 10% off coupon for Barnes 4-wheel drive for your winter projects. And we will see you in the next video.